Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today I thought I would share with you a little summer TBR. It's not fully summer here yet, but it's warming up, and actually right now, like the temperature is like perfect for me because it's very middling. It's a little chilly in the morning, and then in the day it's like very manageable, and it's kind of nice, but I'm sure it's gonna get warmer. I'm not the biggest fan of summer, or actually, that's not true. I'm not the biggest fan of heat. Like, the heat is what kills me, and I just can't handle it at all. Like mild summer, I'm a big fan of, but like when it gets very, very hot, it's not for me. There are things that I really like about summertime though, like having time off school, and I usually have like annual leave and more time off work. I really enjoy ice cream. I like reading. I like more ice cream. There are things that I really like, and I am like I always get really excited about reading in summer, and I am probably overestimating how much I'm going to be able to read, but you got to be a little bit delusional in life, you know? Anyways, let's get into this TBR. Firstly, I want to read some translated books, so I've picked out these three. The first one is Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. I really like this author, so I'm really excited to read this book. It sounds so weird though. It's like sci-fi dystopian, I'm not really sure, but it's set in the future where humans live in these small tribes, and it says that they are all watched over by something that's referred to as mothers. And it says that humans are sometimes made in factories, sometimes made by interbreeding with aliens, and sounds wild. I'm both intrigued and a little scared with what I'm gonna find in here, but I feel like this author does weird really well, and she does like experimental stuff really well, so I'm excited to see how she handles this and to see what's actually going on and how like the system works. I think it's going to be the kind of book that really makes me think, and it's going to be interesting. There is also a quote from the book on the back here. It says, "Don't you think there's something strange about the way we live just to be made and raised and to marry and to raise children and then die again? But that's simply how it goes." Maybe this is going to like make me feel very existential. I don't know, but I'm excited to read it. The second one I have, I'm pretty sure it's going to be more of like a calm slice of life type of situation. It's Letters from the Ginza Shinodo Stationery Shop by Kenji Ueda. And this is set in a small neighborhood where there's this stationery shop where you can find everything you need. The shop owner always knows what you want, and there is a little like space at the top of the stationery shop where you can sit down and write, and it says that you can like unlock repressed memories, and I guess this place is kind of magical. I don't really know how it works, but I'm guessing it's the kind of thing where like people go there to write and discover things about themselves that they didn't know or needed to process, something like that. I think it's the kind of book where we see several characters visit the shop for various reasons, and we get to know them through like them writing and shopping in this store. And yeah, I really like these kinds of like calm and charming stories, and I just like the idea of this being a stationery shop because a lot of these stories are like coffee shops or bookshops, which I also love, but I just like the idea of a stationery shop. And it also says here, write a letter, heal your heart, which sounds very nice. Then we have another book that sort of has a similar vibe to it. It's The Convenience Store by the Sea by Sonoko Machida, and this is set in a small town, I'm guessing by the sea. And in this town, there is a 24/7 convenience store that seems to always have exactly what you need. It does seem a little weird though, because it mentions that the customers are really eccentric, the store owner has a fan club, and I don't know. I don't know if there's something magical going on in this or if it's just like a really nice store to go to. It says it's a book about like community and connection, and that's really nice. And I hope the setting of it is really good. I like that there are also like small illustrations at the beginning of the chapters. This is definitely ice cream, which we have established I'm a big fan of. I will say though, the quote on the back here just makes me chuckle because it says, "They say the finishing touch in cooking is always love, and I believe the same thing is true for serving customers. I always try to remember to smile with love at the person standing before me." I think that's very sweet and very romantic, but it makes me chuckle because I worked in a store for almost 10 years in retail, and that is not how I felt. Probably it's what I should have felt, which is why I left, but yeah, that wasn't the vibe in the store I worked at least not with me. But I guess for some people, that's how they feel. And I'm sure like that's what makes these kinds of books nice to read, of course, because if you read a book about me working in retail, it would be a very different vibe. Moving away from the translated books, we then have a book that I got quite recently. It's Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. This is a story about a stay-at-home mom who I think is also an artist, and she is very lonely. And I think like her husband is away for work a lot, and she's just really struggling with her life, and she's scared that she's gonna lose her mind. But then instead, something else happens where she starts transforming into something else, something with like bigger canines and patches of fur, and I don't know what she turns into. Is it like a werewolf situation, or is it a dog or some other kind of furry creature? I don't know, but she turns into something else, which sounds a little unhinged, and I'm kind of into it. This is the kind of horror that I'm into where it's not like too scary and it's more like weird and yeah, I don't really know what to expect from this. The quotes on the back mention that this is unnerving and brilliant and graceful, which is an interesting word, and it also mentions that this is funny. So I am very curious about the tone of this book and the writing because I feel like this kind of humorous writing, it sometimes doesn't work for me, but when it does, I usually end up loving it. So I hope that this is the kind of writing that is really gonna work for me. I feel like having this story with a little bit of like funny, maybe the word funny isn't correct, but like a humorous tilt to it could be really good. It could also be really bad, but yeah, I'm hoping for good. Another book following a woman who seems a bit lost is Woman Eating by Claire Kohda, which follows a vampire who moves away from home for the first time. She moves away from her mother to London and she wants to be an artist. And I just think that sounds exactly like the kind of vampire story I would like to read. I think I like traditional vampire stories as well, but I just like the idea of like a young woman trying to find her place in the world, but then she's also struggling with the fact that she's hungry all the time and all she can eat is blood. It does mention that like she wants to eat all of these other things, but she can't. Like the only thing that she can eat is blood, and she's always hungry. And I just like the idea of that with just trying to find a place in life when you move out for the first time. Like, I just think that mix is going to be really interesting. I do think it's the kind of book that could maybe be a little bit boring though. Sometimes I really like boring books, which is maybe a weird thing to say, but I don't know. I hope I'm gonna like this one. Again, it says that it's like witty, and I hope that it is. It also isn't too long, which I feel like is a good thing because I don't think the story should be too long. I think it's around 200 pages actually. So yeah, I'm very intrigued as to what this is gonna be like and like the whole vampire situation, but also just the trying to find yourself thing. Then we have a book that I hauled not too long ago, and when I did, a lot of people were very excited that I got this book, which made me very excited to read it. It's Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. And this is historical fiction. I don't remember, yeah, in the 1800s, 1862, in London, we meet this orphan who grows up at an orphanage where I think they're being trained as like thieves or something. And when she gets a little bit older, she gets caught up in this con that changes everything. And I don't really know what the whole story is about. I've heard that this takes a lot of twists and turns, and like the first bit is like this part of the story, and then in the middle, a mystery happens, and then we spend time on that. I don't really know, but for such a chunky book, I'm assuming there's a lot going on in this, and people seem to love this, so I'm very excited. I think going in blind with this one might actually be a good idea. I'm just gonna jump in and see what I find. I'm excited to read something from this author though. I did get a few comments saying that there were a few outdated bits in this, which I'm wondering like, what's that about? But I am aware of it, so it's good to know before you go in. But I'm just gonna jump into this at some point. I am a little bit intimidated because it is over 500 pages, and the font isn't like super big, so it might take me a while to read, which I feel like summer is a good time to do that because I always feel like I have more time then, which might just be me making that up, but yeah. Hopefully, I will have time for it this summer. Next, we have a book that I'm really looking forward to. It's The Invisible Hour by Alice Hoffman, and I just love this author's writing. Like, she's such a good storyteller. I've read 4 books by her. I've read the Practical Magic series, like those 4 books, and I loved them. And I'm excited to read something else by her. This sounds really good. It's about a woman who lives in like an oppressive cult in Massachusetts, and the story is all about her, I think, trying to get out of it. There is something about time travel in here. I feel like there's a time travel element to this, and I don't know how that fits into the story, but I also know that a big part of the story is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, so maybe it has something to do with that. I haven't fully grasped it, but I don't know. I think this kind of cult with this author's writing could be really interesting. I will say though, I am curious about how much the Scarlet Letter is going to appear in this, or like how big of a part of the story it's going to be, because I read that book like a decade ago and I hated it. Maybe I wouldn't feel the same now, but like I just absolutely did not get along with that book at all. So I hope that the way that it's in this really works for me. I feel like it will, because the moral of that story, I understand. I think it was just like the writing and the timing didn't work for me, but the writing in this is for sure gonna be great. Then we have a book with such a beautiful cover. Like, look at this. This is Island Queen by Vanessa Riley, and this whole like vibe just screams summer to me, or at least like a warm climate. I'm sure you could read this any time of year, but I don't know. This just feels like a summery read to me. This is historical fiction and it follows, I actually think this is based on a true story. It follows a woman who rose from slavery. Like I think she bought her own freedom and she became like one of the wealthiest and most powerful landowners in the colonial West Indies. And that seems to be quite the life. Like, who wouldn't want to read about her? She sounds incredible. I think we follow her through her whole life, from being born on a small Caribbean island to everything that she became. She became like an entrepreneur, and I just really like that. I've said this several times, I really like when fiction books are based on true, like, events or real people, even though it's a fictionalized version. I always end up Googling things and like learning things because of that, because I get really curious. So that's going to be an added element to this. That's going to be great. And yeah, this is also a little bit on the chunkier side though, so I need to get on this, but it's just beautiful and I am obsessed with this cover. Like, it's just so good. We have more historical fiction with this next one. It's Empire of Shadows by Jacqueline Benson, which will be kind of like a mix of a reread and a new read for me, because I've read this book in another edition. It was published as The Smoke Hunter, I'm pretty sure it's called. I read that version, and now the author has published this version, which is like been reworked and things have been added to it, and I loved the version that I read, and so I want to read this again and see how it's different. And it's the first book in a series, and I've been wanting the second and like the next books as well, and I just feel like I need to read slash reread this before I read those. And yeah, I loved the first time I read this. It was so much fun. It's an adventure book set in Victorian times, and we follow this woman who finds this map and decides that she's going to find this lost place, which is what the map leads to. But she's not the only person who wants to find this place. There's also some really bad people who want to, so it becomes like a race, and she gets help from this guy eventually, and it's just a lot of fun. It's kind of like over the top and a little bit ridiculous, but it's also the closest book that I've found that is like a similar vibe to the movie The Mummy, which is one of my favorite movies, and I cannot find that in any books, but this is the closest that I've gotten. It's not the same, but it has a lot of the same vibes, and it's like funny and a little over the top, and there's a lot of like swishing around and running around, but it's so much fun to read about, and it's like peak entertainment for me. Then we have more adventure with Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibañez, which is the sequel to What the River Knows, which I read earlier. Was it this year? I think maybe this year or late last year. I read the first one and I really enjoyed it. And this is, I think, just a duology, so this will be the final book in the series. Is it a series if it's just 2 books? Either way, this is the final book, I think. In the first book, we meet our main character as she travels from Brazil to Egypt to find out what happened to her parents who have died. And it becomes like this whole thing. There's a lot of mysteries and adventure and archaeology. And I'm pretty sure that this book just follows the events of that book. The first book ended on quite the note, so I am dying to know what happens in this one. Dying is maybe a strong word. I'm very curious as to what's gonna happen in this. And I kind of like the fact that it's just 2 books. I feel like that's sort of enough. And yeah, I really liked the first one. It wasn't like a new favorite, but there were a lot of elements to it that I really liked, and I think I'm really gonna enjoy this one as well. I know what kind of mood I need to be in to read this, and I'm just waiting for it to happen. Lastly, I have a couple of nonfiction books picked out because I realized not too long ago that I haven't read any nonfiction so far this year. Usually, like, the majority of my reading is always fiction, but I try to read like a good portion of nonfiction for me, at least. I try to squeeze them in. But so far this year, I have just been like, I know why I haven't read it. It's because I've been reading to relax because my brain has been completely overwhelmed so far this year. It's just like with work and school, and it's just a little bit too much for me. So I feel like I haven't been able to take in any more information. But now it's like closer to summer. I have a little bit of more brain capacity, I think, kind of. So I want to try to get to some nonfiction over the next couple of months. I've picked out 2, and the first one is Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley, which is a book about Jane Austen. And I think we explore her life through all of the places where she lived. I kind of want to read it this year because it's like some sort of anniversary for Jane Austen. I can never remember if it's her birth or her death or what it was, but like this is a Jane Austen year, so I kind of want to read it this year. I'm also really excited to learn more about Jane Austen because even though I've read most of her books, I don't know anything about her, like almost at all, so I'm excited to learn. And I'm excited to read something from this author because I've heard that her style is like very conversational, and it's not for everyone, but it's when I've heard people describe the writing style, it seems like the kind of writing style that I would really love. So I'm hoping that if I like this one, there are more books to read that I could be interested in. And yeah, this also has like photos in it, and I think this is an interesting angle to look at Jane Austen's life. I feel like I'm gonna learn a lot. The last one I have in my stack is All the Beauty in the World by Patrick Bringley. This is a memoir, and it tells the story of the author who worked as a museum guard for a decade at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I think he did this as a sort of response to losing his brother, and he just needed to shift something in his life. So he ended up going for this job, and he ended up working there for a long time. And I think it's about his work and his grief, and I think it's going to be very interesting. I like these kinds of memoirs where the author explores a certain part of their life, but also like a job that I don't know a lot about. So I think this is going to be great. I also just love museums, so that's cool. And I think I've seen that there are some illustrations in here, which I also really think is cool. Yeah, we have a couple here. There's one here. I've also seen an illustrations of like, I think the building. I can't remember. I don't know, but there's illustrations of all kinds of different art pieces in here, and I just think this is going to be a nice little read. I also just love reading about museums and art. and stuff. So I think this is going to be great. That was the last book that I had to show you today though, which means we've reached the end of this video. Now I would love to know if you have made a summer TBR, if you're planning to do it, or if you just have a couple of books in mind that you think you want to read over the summer. I would love to hear about it. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!